Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Lori, and I'm excited today to be joined by a friend from England, Marsha, who is on the International Society of the Study of Personality Disorders Lived Experience committee with me. Before we get started, just wanting to thank our newest Patreon members. So thank you so much to Michael, Presley, Benny, Sandra, Jen, and Nicole. Really appreciate all of your support. If you are able to support the show on Patreon, I really appreciate it between $5 to $20 a month. And it's just a small donation to help keep this work going. Okay, so Marsha, it's so nice to have you on. I feel like we've known each other now for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And we're both involved in the Society of the Study of Personality Disorders Lived Experience Committee. But do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself generally and who you are?
Thank you for having me on. I'm based in the UK. And I'm someone who identifies as having had borderline personality disorder. I've been campaigning in the UK for the last few years to bring to life or bring to the awareness around stigma that comes with borderline personality disorder, or as we often now refer to it here in the UK, emotional unstable personality disorder, or more recently, complex emotional needs. So I'm someone who identifies with that diagnosis, which meant that I got the life-saving treatment called mentalization-based treatment, which I always say saves me from myself. So
I would love to get into mentalization treatment a little bit more, because that's something that in North America is less common, I find. So we don't talk about it as much on here. So that's amazing. Let's get into that in a second. So you said which of the labels do you identify with the most at this point?
The borderline personality disorder one. Yeah.
Okay. I always like to use the words that people prefer when I'm talking to them. So, okay. So you had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder at one point. What kind of led up to that diagnosis?
So much chaos and so much pain. And despite trying to engage in services, just being told no, and being excluded from services. And it was only after, I guess in 2000, and that I was in for an inpatient stay, mental health inpatient stay. And I remember at the time, the psychiatrist saying to me, because it was a breakup, that I was suffering from bereavement, but that then didn't explain the next few chaotic years. And then it was only after some time that I remember being diagnosed with that, and suddenly I didn't feel evil anymore. And I had a name for it, and it was able to explain some of what I was doing to my mum and my son. But at the time, there was no therapy or anything, that was...
So when was this? What year was this?
It would have been between 2000 and 2006. Because as many people disassociate through a lot of pain, I've lost quite a few years of my life, memory. But it was only after a near fatal overdose in 2008 that saw me in an induced coma for 3 weeks, and then being weaned off oxygen for the other week and then shipped back out into the community that finally I started receiving some care and was treated with care and empathy.
Good. I'm glad to. I mean, obviously, I'm not happy that it took that long or that severe of circumstances, but I'm glad that you were treated with care and empathy when you got there.
Thank you.
Yeah. I didn't realize you had a son. So yeah, I mean, I think that complicates things as well, right? Yeah, being a mom and going through all of this. So when you were diagnosed, had you heard of
No,
borderline personality disorder before?
not at all. And like I say, at the time, there wasn't very much on social media at the time or anything.
No.
And thankfully, what I did read was actually okay.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's how long
I'm
ago
shocked,
it
but I'm happy
was.
for you.
There
Yeah,
was
yeah.
sort of,
Oh,
there was information. Not like now when you type in BPD and someone will say you're the Antichrist or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
literally, yeah.
so
It's wild.
it was all those times that I was going to accident and emergency and creating chaos and havoc. It was because I was in so much pain, but the way that I was perceived was attention seeking and manipulative and that. And sadly, it took one too many overdoses before I finally received that life-changing care. But it took, the overdose was in 2008, and it was only in 2010 when I began MBT, which was still quite new.
Yeah, yeah, I was
Oh,
thinking.
God.
How old were you at that point?
I'm ancient.
Well, lucky for you, I'm
I
bad at
think
math.
I was about 30. So,
Okay.
it
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah. That's not ancient, but yes. But it also like, it's so interesting when people get their treatment first, because I feel like it makes such a huge difference of how much of your life has been chaos and how ingrained some of these things are. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean 30 is like, I would say maybe kind of an average age, but when I see people who don't get treatment until 70, or they get treatment at 15,
Definitely.
It makes such a big difference, right? There's always time. If anybody's listening to this and they're 70, there's still time. You can change, but it's harder for sure. So tell me about MBT, mentalization-based therapy. What is this?
It's a specialist long-term psychological therapy. It's designed to improve your ability to understand thoughts, feelings, and intentions of yourself and others. Think about thinking, different situations, why you act in the way that you do, impulsive reactions. It also allows you to regulate your emotions and build healthier relationships, but it's damn hard to do. And it
I
is the initial psychoeducation session part of MBT was 12 weeks, meeting as a group. And then it was an intense 18-month therapy. I always say on a Monday, I had my one-to-one therapy, and then on the Wednesday was group therapy. And I often say it was like sometimes being in a room with lots of vipers, all really angry and everything.
Yeah.
But through being encouraged to bring things back into group by the therapist, and being challenged by some of the feelings and it being talked about, you couldn't just leave the room, that type of thing. And I guess it was as well the curiosity of the therapist that made me start going from just thinking about me, all that pain, to start thinking about a bit more of opening up and thinking about why I may act the way that I did. And also sort of think, hey, anyone would be angry about that, but you get deemed as attention seeking and manipulative, or you're just complaining it's your BPD.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, sometimes, our own self-stigma too makes us beat ourselves up over various things because we've been told that we're bad people or that we're the problem or all these things. Out of curiosity, so I haven't done MBT. I've only done DBT, dialectic behavior therapy. saved my life. But I know MBT is interesting for a lot of people, and I would love to know more about it. But I have a big problem personally with rumination. Like I get stuck in thought patterns really easily. And in some ways, it sounds like MBT is really in your thoughts. So do you struggle with rumination? And if so, did it make it worse or better?
It actually made it better because I started to question some of what I was thinking, but doing it in an okay way and doing it in a setting, because MBT was like 18 months, so I had boundaries and routine, I had a safe space, and the therapist was supportive outside that time as well, which was really good, because of any crises or that. And he worked closely with a group of, I call it my circle of care, which was, really important people to me from the crisis team, Crisis Point, my best friend, the community mental health team. So it was a full circle of care, which I realize is not very accessible for so many people around the world. Thankfully, in the UK, we have the NHS.
Yes. I'm in Canada, so we have a similar model to the NHS, which, as you know, every health system has its problems, but I'm very thankful that we get to have publicized medicine, because otherwise this would be inaccessible to most people.
When you were talking about rumination, what did you mean? How would that be like for you?
I get stuck in cycles of thoughts, so I won't be able to get out of the cycle of thought. So this is one of the reasons that I have really bad sleep issues, is I'll just think about the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and I'll make it worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And so I take Seroquel at night to help me with that. But I'm always fascinated by things that make you get even further into your thoughts, because to me, sometimes that could be a slippery slope, I think. And I've never done MBT, so I'm sure that they have ways to address that. But to overthink what I'm thinking can sometimes be more challenging.
As the thousands of thoughts going through your mind at the same time, 1 minute crying, happy, screaming, crying, all within like minutes. MBT gave me the tools to be able to pause, think about one thing at a time, and actually validate, how I was feeling. And then curiosity would be to check it out.
Yeah, fair. I mean, in some ways it kind of sounds like, I don't know if you're familiar with Wise Mind and DBT. It's a concept, a skill where it's like, you look at what your situation is, and you're looking at, there's like a Venn diagram. And so one side of the Venn diagram is rational, one side of the Venn diagram is emotional. And then you're trying to find this middle ground that incorporates both. And so it kind of makes you do that processing of, I'm thinking about this thought. Is this thought on the rational side, or is it on the emotional side? And then is there a way that I can make this like a balance of both? So it's similar, I think, probably in terms of analyzing your own thoughts, but easier said than done.
But can I just say, I do get over and over and over thought, and thinking, shit, stop, I need to just rest.
Yeah, exactly. It's so hard because our brains just don't turn off. And it's so funny. I'm married, and sometimes I'll ask my husband, like, what are you thinking about? And he's like, nothing. And I'm like, I've never not been thinking about something, right? Like, even when I'm trying really hard to meditate or like be in the moment, like there's always 100 things on my mind. And so it's such a fascinating thing that some people's brains can be empty. And I think that would be really peaceful, but I don't actually know, because it's never occurred to me, because I don't think that's physically possible for my brain.
So I feel like I'm boring now, because the chaos, it was, but it was the only thing that I could control, and the pain and everything, and so self-harming in that was the only way I could control anything. But I do think I'm very boring now.
I don't think you're boring, but I do understand that because sometimes I feel the same way in that like we're so used to chaos and used to being this force of force of chaos. And then you learn so many skills to control those things. And then it becomes like mundane almost, which is it's better in the long run because you're not blowing up your life every 5 minutes. But it does sometimes feel a bit boring. I will admit.
Not that we're making fun of, what people are experiencing things and that, because it is painful, isn't it?
It 100%. 100%.
Something that someone that I know always says, people with BPD feel more than anything. It's very painful, that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And I don't think it's possible for people to understand that if you don't experience it. And which is why I love talking to people who do experience it, because it feels so validating to be able to talk to someone who's like, yes, I get it. And you know that they actually
Definitely.
do, which is, I think, the difference.
Can I ask you another thing? You mentioned about my son before.
Mm-hmm.
He became the carer. He became the parent, carer from the age of 10 to 18. And from my part of my Churchill Fellowship, I was looking at if there was anything for young carers, or there wasn't. And so it's something that keeps me awake at night, sort of thinking about, all of the siblings and the children and that. And yeah, it's
the siblings. I don't have kids, but the siblings piece is something that will forever stick with me. Because I know I made a lot of hardship for my sibling, and I know that there's lots of people out there, and I also know that, they're not perfect either, but there is a lot of impact for siblings for sure.
Yeah,
is your son still in your life?
But he does get depressed in that. He's 32 now and doing some really great stuff, and all you want is for them to be happy, and that. So yeah.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
he moved out.
Does he live with you?
Years ago.
Okay.
He moved out
Nice.
just after COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good timing. So, okay. So I want to get in. Well, is there anything else about your personal story that you want to talk about before we get into the Churchill stuff?
For me, one of the things that has always worried me is whenever I used to self-harm and I'd go to accident and emergency, I would just be discharged back to my GP. And I joke that years ago they would have got a fax from the hospital. I think they're just getting it better now.
It's barely. I'm like, sometimes faxes are still used in medical systems in 2026. It's wild. But yes, I'm sure it's better now.
But something that I've done so much harm to my body because of the overdosing, and when I woke up from the induced coma, the right side of my body was messed up, and it started with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, type 2 diabetes. It's like rolls on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I have carers that help me with, like tonight, my hair was a bit messed up, so the carers just quickly run.
It looks really good, actually. I was just going to say your hair looks amazing.
That, or else I'd look like Medusa in that. And I've had some dinner and meal medication prompts and that, but I just don't understand why there's no psychoeducation, and someone to sit with you afterwards and that, because
right, they're helping you with all the physical things, but not the mental things.
Also not telling you about the physical bit that can, you just get seen by the doc in an accident and
Mm.
emergency, you're fine, and off you go. But I just wished that there'd been a bit more psychoeducation for me. Yeah.
Yeah, emergency rooms is what we call them out here, is such a hard place for people with BPD and people who self-harm and overdose and all of those things, intentional or otherwise, because there is a lot of stigma, and there's also a lot of like, misinformation or conflicting information about the best way to deal with people who have BPD in an emergency situation like that. And so, it's probably that they were looking at your wounds and saying, "Oh, yeah, physically you're fine. Go talk to your GP." But that's not what you needed in that moment, it sounds like.
So in the UK, you go into the hospital, you get seen by the receptionist, she checks you in, and then you get seen by a triage nurse. And then you go through to the main accident emergency, but there's a desk there. I always call them the Rottweilers.
Mm-hmm.
The keepers. I remember being in the waiting room and sometimes policemen standing at the side of me. But then there's all these other people around you and everything, and they're there for physical health. And so sometimes I used to act out and leave and then have to get brought back and everything like that. And sometimes they're not the best places for someone that's, struggling in crisis or that. Because although
but they're the only
in the UK,
option,
we're
really,
starting to doing alternatives to accident and emergency rooms, when you're in crisis, which is really great. Yeah.
Like a mental health specific?
So,
wow, that's amazing.
It's really good, but it's something that we've been campaigning for many years. But it's hit and miss. It's like a postcard lottery. Right. But we could do. I live in Manchester.
And whereabouts in the UK are you?
Right.
Okay.
And no, I don't support football. I don't.
Well, lucky for you, I don't even know anything about any sport, so you're fine. I did watch Ted Lasso, but that's as close as I got, and that was just because it was a heartwarming show. It's okay, I'm Canadian and I don't follow hockey, so we're in the same boat. Okay, so I totally agree with you. The differences that we treat mental and physical health is still needing to change rapidly, and that like the physical component of something like self-harm is so much easier for people to feel that they can deal with, because it's like a wound, as opposed to a longer standing, more challenging, harder to diagnose, harder to treat issue like what we live with every day.
I just don't see how policymakers and that don't see the bigger picture. Like, they just see BPD as this little thing, but it's not. It's eating disorders, it's suicide prevention, it's inpatient stays, or in the UK, out of area placements, when you're going far away from home. There's the employment bit, there's the physical health bit. There's so much.
Experiences going in corrections, going to jails. Like there's so much. I mean, obviously not everybody with BPD goes to jail, but you know what I mean? The rate of BPD in prisons is quite high. There's so much cost to systems and governments of disorders like this. And if they were to think about the upstream impact and the cost down the road, I can't remember I know there's been research on this front, but it's a huge amount of cost savings if you're able to navigate people through systems that prevent emergency room visits alone. Even just that is so expensive.
One of the things that I found out as part of my Churchill Fellowship is, now bear with me, so I have cognitive impairment, so I hope what I say comes out right. So personality disorder is listed as the third on the global burden of diseases for mental health.
Wow. Is it like schizophrenia,
I don't know,
depression, and then
sorry.
personality disorders? Okay. No, no, it's okay. It probably, my guess is that it is, just because I know that the burden of like
Uh-huh.
severe depression is very high as well. But
Yep.
wow, that's wild. Okay, so before we get into Churchill stuff, because people don't even know what that is. So let's, you got a Churchill Fellowship, and you have done some very, very cool work in the last couple of years that just got published. We're recording this May 2026, and so it won't come out for a while. But you recorded, or you just published this report. So can you tell us
Okay.
what a Churchill Fellowship is to start with?
So there was Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England.
I
Yeah,
was like, wait,
Prime
you have
Minister,
presidents? Yeah, no, Prime
many,
Minister.
many
Yeah,
years
okay.
ago. And his family set up a charity and raised some funds to fund international research. So it's now known as the Churchill Fellowship, and each year they fund up to 150 change makers from the UK.
So cool.
They fund over 30 different categories. So I was funded under the suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention for young people with BPD. Whenever, because I always think back how different my life trajectory could have been had I received mentalization-based treatment or whatever earlier. Yep.
Or even a diagnosis,
but
right?
a diagnosis with the right psychoeducation, definitely.
Yes.
One that does
sure.
no harm.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes on social media, we've got some platforms that aren't that good, are they? So a reputable, psychoeducation thing would be. So the Churchill Fellowship funded me to go to Australia for a month and then America for a month. So I was lucky enough. I flew to Melbourne and spent 3 weeks at Origin, which is it's known as the Children and Young People Centre for Excellence, and they are renowned for having created the early intervention in psychosis for young people about 30 years ago. But about 25 years ago, they set up, Professor Andrew Channon set up something called HYPE, Helping Young People Early, which is to support young people that experience similar to BPD, the acting out and everything, and all that comes with it, the suicide ideation and everything. And so they get in very early and they support the young person. And what blew me away, because I was there for 3 weeks, was the team to work. It's the clinicians, the researchers, the young people, and caregivers all working in the same team. And the service is always evolving around that young person's needs. So it's not just psychotherapy, and that can be offered. It's clinical, what do they call it? Clinical relational care that they offer. Like I say, the service is always evolving around the young person, and it's not just one thing. And it's a whole team that support them. So it's usually a caseworker that works with the kid, but it's a whole team behind them. So no decisions is made by one person. And they see them, including like sexual health and everything, the whole thing. And what is amazing is that they also work with their family members. They try and encourage together at least once, but they'd understand the different dynamics. So they'd work separately with the caregivers. And I sat in with quite a few clinical review meetings, and listening to the language that they talked about that young person was was with care and love. It sounds daft, but
no, that's so important and not always the case.
And everyone in the room was being really inquisitive, what about this? What about that? As opposed to just one person saying this, right, let's move on to this next case.
Yes.
And it was so unbelievable. And whenever I left there, I thought, how am I going to do them justice? How am
yeah, because you have to write all this up, right, into a report.
I went to the ISSPD Congress in Sydney.
That's the International Study of this. Sorry, let me say that one more time. That is the International Society of the Study of Personality Disorders, ISSPD, for those of you who don't know. I know, I get them. I get it mixed up sometimes, the wording, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
Tongue-tied. So it was lovely coming together with an international community. And then last 2 years ago, this time 2 years ago, I was in the US, and I flew into Boston and spent some time at Gunderson's Personality Disorder Institute, McLean's.
Amazing. I desperately want to have them on this podcast. Actually, they're on my target list of people I want to have on because I think their approach is really interesting.
So I spent a few days there, including had a quick visit to their 3 East, the DBT center, the inpatient center.
Okay.
Then I joke that I went via Amtrak to Connecticut. I thought, was it New Haven, Connecticut, to the Emotions Matters conference. Sorry, I'll start again. To the Family Connections conference, and that was really great.
And just for context for people listening to this, Family Connections is the same. So Emotions Matter runs Family Connections in the States, but in Canada, it's run by Sash Bearer Foundation, which you've heard a lot about Sash Bearer Foundation on this podcast just because we're Canadian. So anyways, just wanted to clarify that so people kind of can figure out what we're talking about.
So the conference itself was with National Education Alliance for BPD. And they do the sort of the family connection training, and it was really great being there. And I was invited to the pre-conference dinner, and hearing about some of those experiences of family members and that really broke my heart. But then seeing how supportive they were as a community was something really special.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And then I went to the University of Houston and spent some time with Dr. Carla Sharp.
Yep, familiar name on this show as well. Yes,
she's really great.
I'm hoping to, actually. If you have her email address, please send it to me because she's on my list. We just had an episode. Oh, actually, I think the episode's going to come out right after this one. There's an episode next week where it's a youth who was actually diagnosed with BPD by Carla herself. So really cool, and I want to have Carla on. Anyways,
let's see continue what we can do. What we can make happen.
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
So spent 3 weeks with her in her lab, where it's called the ADAPT Clinic, which is they address and they diagnose. I'm terrible with the acronym, so apologies. But they assess the young person really, really thoroughly. I sat in some virtual meetings with him, and then I've watched some back as well, and they're very, very thorough with the young person.
Amazing.
It's not just like 15 minutes and then you've got that PD diagnosis. And
yeah,
I guess because the other thing is the lab, or Professor Carla Sharp, is really well known internationally, but especially in the US, because you need to have a diagnosis to get the healthcare. So they have to be, to get, proper healthcare in that. So she has to be very thorough. And I spent a lot of time with her students who are our future. And seeing their work was really great. And what struck me was after the assessment, Dr. Sharp sits with a young person and their caregivers and says, "This is not a life sentence. There is hope.
Yeah.
You can go on to do the things you want to do with the right care and support." And that is something that blew me away because
that's not how so many of our experiences were.
And what was also really good was as an adult, I had mentalization-based treatment, but Dr. Sharp's done a lot around MBT for adolescents. So as part of my research was particularly on that, was MBT for adolescents.
Right.
Thinking about younger Marsha and that. And so, and the other thing is, I'm not an academic and I don't understand the DSM-5 and the ICD-11 or anything like that.
Yeah, I try and understand it, but God, it gets confusing.
Yeah. All I know is that internationally, instead of talking about disordered personality disorder, they're talking about the level of personality functioning. And Professor Sharp and others talk about the alternative model to personality disorder, the criterion A, criterion B, before it gets all, full into BPD, and all the real pain and everything. And that someone fully experiences. Whereas if you can get very early on, what difference you can make to that young person.
Oh, a couple weeks before this episode comes out, there's an episode with Dr. Alec Miller, who does DBT for BPD. And the fact that he even was willing to come on the show made me an emotional wreck, because his work would have changed everything in my life had I had access to DBT as a youth. Like everything. My whole family would have been changed forever. And the fact that MBT, DBT is being started to be targeted to adolescents is like, what a difference that could have made for us.
But I guess it's why we do what we do.
It is exactly why we do what we do. And it's because we know the impact.
The thing for me is the Churchill Fellowship. I always said when I applied for it, I'm quite well known within the mental health community here in the UK. However, the social injustices and inequity that someone with a diagnosis often receives should just be everyone's business. It needs to. Here in the UK, I have to say and acknowledge both sides. So there's people like myself who acknowledge or receiving the diagnosis meant something. But there's also another side that are people that are completely anti the construct of personality disorder. And it's not just people with living experience, it's also clinicians and researchers. There's a real movement now. I understand both sides of things. There is a lot of harm that has been done. I've experienced it myself. And
same here. But to me, that diagnosis was so much more valuable than that harm was negative.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
But we've also got to acknowledge that people die by suicide for, and that. And I guess that's
all
why.
The time.
The other thing I forgot to mention about my final bit of the Churchill Fellowship bit. So went to Carla Sharp's, and then I had to fly back via New York for Emotions Matters BPD walk. I've got
yes. So fun. She's wearing the Emotions Matters shirt right now if you're just listening to the audio of this.
years ago, someone shared me an email with their BPD fest that they do every year and everything, and I had to go back to my advocacy role, so that was why my final stop was with Emotions Matters, and walking along. Well, I wasn't walking along, I was on my mobility scooter along the river with them, and
Yeah.
was so
Same thing.
It meant so much. I actually felt part of a community, and that so they've always have a special place in my heart. So
Yeah. I really want to go to the BPD Fest one day. I obviously right now I'm not traveling to the States for obvious reasons. But
we'll have to try
God,
and
it would be
time
amazing to go.
Is it about?
It really would.
Is it about 3-4 years
Yes.
time? Maybe we should.
I think in a few years we might be able to go. Yeah, exactly.
As long as we don't put anything bad on social media.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, what a life we live, isn't it wild? Yes, so I think their BPD walk, is in May, and I think it's next week, maybe when we're recording this. By the time this comes out, it's already happened. But so fun. I wish there was more of things like that. So what was? I mean, I've read your Churchill Fellowship. There's so much information now. It's published, so I'll make sure that's linked for people to read.
I turn out to be like that.
Because it's so huge. It's massive. It's massive, but it's fascinating. I'm a little sad you didn't make it to Canada, because that would have been extra cool for me, because I would have known. But still, I mean, the people you met with, the work that you did, there was so much to reflect on that we don't have time to go into all of it. But I highly encourage people to read the report, because it's really well done. I know after I read it, Marsha, I don't know if you remember this, but I read, I think, the draft, and I sent you like a essay of like all of the interesting things that I thought were in there.
That really did mean a lot, because I didn't know how it was going to be landed. And
it was great.
For me, it was not just the people living with experience of BPD, it was the caregivers, the clinicians, the researchers, but the students as well.
Yeah, like you said, they're the future, right?
What blew me away is the Shine the Light interviews, which was people with living experience, and how it clearly shows very early on some of their distressing times. And then later, whatever intervention it was, they're doing amazing work within their communities, and that they're leading in a lot of areas in that. And I just wanted to try and do them justice.
Yeah, and you did. You really did. It's long. I'm not going to lie to you. It's long, but it's a beautiful report. And what I loved about it is it's long, but you could read it in sections. Like, you don't need to read it from cover to cover and still get so much. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a while, but one of the main points that you make is essentially like the diagnosis is essential for people to heal and understand themselves and not feel like this horrible person, right? Which I know we both relate to greatly.
Can I ask you something? And I wish I'd come to Canada. I need to try and get something else.
I mean,
I know.
Well, you are coming to Canada in June, right? I know, but not the right side of Canada. You're on the exact opposite side of Canada.
So for me, I'm doing things that I never, ever thought possible in my life. And I guess it's things like this, your voice, that gives people hope. And I think in our world, when you're feeling so much pain in that, hearing your voice and others really matters. So thank you for all that you do in your work.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. I mean, honestly, what I try and do is just set a platform for others to share, right? I mean, most of the time I've done hundreds of podcast episodes, and that's hundreds of people's stories that get to be shared. And to me, that's that's my honor, is holding the space for people to share, because every one of our stories is as valid as the next. And I think, we all experienced at one point in our lives this either lack of hope or feeling as though or being told that we were this horrible human being. And to understand that that is not what it was, that we were a person, we were or are a person who is deeply struggling with intense emotions and trauma and the lack of skills to cope with the world around us. And that's all it is. We're not bad people. We're not flawed people. We're super feelers, and that's okay.
Definitely.
That's a good thing in the end of the day.
The things that I do now is, like, my Churchill Fellowship findings is I'm calling for a cross-governmental early detection and intervention pathway for young people. And then there's something here in the UK called NICE guidelines, which treatment and everything has to...
Yes.
Oh.
What does that stand for?
It's okay.
I know you said you're bad at acronyms. Sorry, I shouldn't. I used to know
National...
That's okay. It doesn't matter. I can't remember. But NICE guidelines.
So,
sure, we can Google it.
I'm wanting them to update their guidelines, and thankfully, I have, I'm part of an international community now, which is really great.
Yeah. Sorry, it's the National Institute of Health and Care Excellence. No worries. Sorry, yes, you're part of this international community. Well, this is the leadership exchange you're talking about?
In general,
or
really,
just in general?
And thankfully, my the fellowship has given me access to quite a lot of unbelievable people working around early detection, and that I'm trying to GAP, which is the global, you know how I should have done this, I'm sorry.
Oh my God, no worries. I'm not good at acronyms either. Oh, if you type in Gap Global, it shows up as the clothing brand, so that's not helpful. Okay, go.
We can edit this bit.
Yes, exactly. We totally know what we're talking about.
The unbelievable thing about my fellowship is it also gave me the opportunity to really connect with something called GAP, which is the Global Alliance for Prevention and Early Intervention of BPD. It is an international initiative launched many years ago, and it focuses on improving awareness, research, early intervention for individuals experiencing chronic emotional deregulation and BPD. So there is so many different experts in this area, and so I'm hoping that through their work I'll be able to encourage NICE to update their guidelines.
You do such important work. And to disseminate the findings of your report and showcase the amazing work that's happening around the world in BPD is, first of all, I can't imagine how exciting that was. And what a huge thing to be able to do that and be funded to do that is so cool. But just to show that people like us can do amazing things like you did with your fellowship is so inspiring.
That my mobility scooter took me all over the world, but it did.
It sure did. It sure did.
And I always joke, if something's in my way, I just go around it on my scooter.
It's perfect. Well, is there anything from your Churchill Fellowship that you really want to highlight here that we haven't already talked about?
I guess it's just a plea to people to reach out and ask for help. I know it's really hard. but you do matter.
Yep. And life doesn't have to look like this.
And I'm really sorry all the pain that you're going through in that. But hopefully, I mean, I saw the really good what healthcare can buy, like McLean's Gunderson Personality Disorder Institute. But then I saw Emotions Matters and what they do with next to nothing. And the stuff that you do in the BPD bunch, and there's this international community. And so that's really good. The only other thing that my fellowship taught me was, and this is what I'm so glad about, was in the UK, the diagnosis seems to be a Caucasian female diagnosis. And that is never set right with me. And so in my report, I've interviewed Andre, I think he's a trustee of Emotions Matters.
Yes.
And he talks about what it's like as a young Black American man having to be so mindful of his body language, his tone of voice, because he'll be perceived in some way. And then there was the last person he's now in the UK, but I talk about his 3 different countries that he's lived in. He was from South Asia, where mental health was not tolerated or spoken about. And he really struggled as a kid, but was clever enough to get a scholarship to America. Got ill, very ill there, but thankfully he had healthcare cover, so he got some really good care. And his first clinician was someone who was a migrant child herself, so she understood the dynamics.
Understood.
And then it was around COVID, so he got very ill, so was in an inpatient at McLean's, one of the places. And he talks about him being the only South Asian man there. In that, and then once his scholarship ended, he had to leave the country. So luckily, his experience meant he's got some work here in the UK, but he's having to pay for private healthcare here as well. And he thought it would be very easy to get a therapist like what the one in America was, but he's really struggled. And so that's something that doesn't sit right with me. And it's something I always trying to challenge. What does culturally appropriate care look like?
Absolutely. And we need to share those voices. I run into that all the time. I'm always trying to be really cognizant of making sure that we're sharing diverse voices in all respects, especially on podcasts like this, because it is easy for mental health advocates to all be middle-aged white women, right? Like that just is how it is 90% of the time. And I try really hard to showcase voices that are not middle-aged white women, even though we're both middle-aged white women. But anyways, our stories are valid too, but I try really hard. And it is hard because there's just so many layers of stigma and cultural shame and all of these things that people don't feel comfortable sharing. So, I mean, if anybody's listening to this and you're not a middle-aged white woman, please reach out, because I would love to share more stories. And I do an okay job of it, but it's not anywhere near the extent that I want to be able to share more stories.
Sometimes I may not do myself any favors when I sort of say, hang on a minute, we're all Caucasian women in this group.
Yeah. But it's not about us getting favors, right? It's about us making space for others and even taking ourselves out of the space if there's somebody else that can come in. I think that's so important.
And I know that we have to finish soon, but I just want to thank you really for doing all that you do. and holding yourself to account with what you've just said. And I was watching back some of your things earlier on in that, and I just was really blown away by the different experiences that you captured. So thank you for that.
My gosh, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the work you do and showcasing other people's stories as well. I'm so glad we finally did this. I know we've been talking about it for like a year. I always have one final question that I ask. What is your favorite part of having borderline personality disorder?
I have a big heart. I see the best in people, no matter what it is. Yeah. And we're so loyal.
I totally agree.
And we're very clever, really. All of us are very, very clever. So, yeah.
It's so true. Beautiful answer. Well, Marsha, thank you so much for coming on and for all you do. And I'm just so glad that we're connected. So thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the unceded traditional territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you'd like to support the show, you can find bonus content on Patreon or donate directly on PayPal. If you're looking for peer support and joining the best BPD community out there, you can sign up for the Superfeelers Club or Skills Lab sessions for free at www.superfeeler.ca/peer support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a rating or review, and share it with someone who might find it helpful. It really does make a difference and helps more people find the show. Truly, that 5-star rating means way more than you think it does. Don't forget to follow me over on social media for announcements, show clips, and more. You can find links to everything over at my new site, www.superfeeler.ca. So much easier to remember than my hard-to-spell last name. Until next time, take good care of yourself and keep on superfeeling. Lots of love, and thanks for listening.